Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here's your detailed weather forecast update for Monday, the 20th of October 2025. We've got lots to get through today, including a severe thunderstorm risk in southeast Queensland, plenty of showers and thunderstorms across northern Australia, a tropical low offshore from WA, and plenty of low pressure system and rainfall activity through southwestern and southeastern Australia. If you are brand new to the channel, please do consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things this morning with the situation over in southeast Queensland. And whilst the severe thunderstorm risk is not immediate, you can begin to see that heat is really building through parts of central and western Queensland, especially already at 35 degrees this morning in Mount Isa, and it's going to get much warmer throughout the course of today. We've got extreme heat pushing forward from this cold front here that's racing through South Australia. That's going to spark some severe thunderstorms there, but this heat is going to push in towards southeast Queensland, and by Thursday we're going to be looking at one of the warmest days of the year through southeast Queensland, particularly around the Sunshine Coast. So let's have a look at those temperatures on Thursday. You can see them pushing well into the 30s very early on into the day, but then you can see them quickly climbing into the high 30s for some places here, 37, pushing closer to 38 up around Gympie, and then as you get further inland, we're looking at temperatures climbing towards 40 degrees. Brisbane will race up very quickly to a top of about 32 or 33, but on this forecast here from the eastern Relief, you can see these temperatures do begin to cool off after about midday or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that is because this Seabreeze line begins to develop along the coastline. Now, if you think the term Seabreeze line sounds familiar, well, it's the term that we saw on Saturday that pushed all of those severe thunderstorms over into the southern and the western suburbs of Brisbane. We have the exact same setup once again coming in on Thursday afternoon by the looks of things, which is that gusty, cool southerly change that's going to bring humid conditions clashing into that warmer and drier environment, and it really does leave us with a pretty good setup for severe thunderstorm activity. Now, let's just start off with what we know. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainties between the forecast models, in particularly due to the timing regarding this Seabreeze change that's coming through. Some models have it coming in later in the afternoon at about 4 or 5 o'clock. The GFS is one of those models. The Icon actually has it coming in a bit earlier at about 3 o'clock, but the Eastern Weather Forecast model has this pushing into the coastline from about 2 o'clock onwards. There's still some discrepancies between the timing, and whilst it doesn't sound like a big difference because it is going to be moving through at such a high speed, if it comes in later, it's going to spark thunderstorms closer to Brisbane. If it comes in earlier, it's going to push these thunderstorms much further north up into the Sunshine Coast and through Gympie and Kingaroy into the firing line, as well as other locations such as Goomeri, Guyanda, Tiaro, Mount Perry, those sort of locations into the firing line of severe thunderstorms. That's a big area that we're talking about in terms of severe thunderstorm potential. We don't know exactly where these storms are going to be developing at this point in time. It looks like the general model consensus is just coming in at about 3 o'clock, which means the thunderstorms are most likely in the South Burnett forecast district and then up towards the Fraser Coast, which will throw Gympie into the firing line, as well as Kilcoy and a few other locations inland from Caboolture into the northwestern suburbs of Brisbane, with Brisbane itself looking to miss out on these thunderstorms once again. A very similar setup to what we were talking about on the weekend. Exceedingly warm daytime temperatures, but we do have a lot higher readings of convective available potential energy, in particular along the Sunshine Coast, where these thunderstorms are now expected to be kind of at their strongest. You can see these values here are pushing well into the 1800 kilojoules per or joules per kilogram type range, and whilst that is mostly an arbitrary number, it shows us that we do have some very high energy values here that these thunderstorms can make the most of around the Sunshine Coast and the Fraser Coast, and then inland to the South Burnett area. So very significant convective available potential energy, and again, considering the temperatures, the one factor holding these thunderstorms back is going to be that humidity, which will be added once that Seabreeze line does come through. But you can see very dry areas expected to push in towards southeast Queensland on Thursday, and you can see these humidity values dropping towards 30% on Thursday morning and into early Thursday afternoon. That could be a little bit too low to get these thunderstorms off the ground. If they do get off the ground, they're going to be high based and very limited in the amount of precipitation that they produce. We will of course see large hailstones if severe thunderstorms do develop, but they'll be very sporadic in nature, even in the strongest of thunderstorms. And again, high amounts of precipitation would not be expected with a setup like this. These humidity values really are quite low, which is what we would expect for the temperatures that we're seeing right now, but you can see that those dew points are very ugly in the lower atmosphere, and we don't really have that defined dry slot until we get above the 500 HPA range. So whilst these are some conducive conditions for thunderstorms, it very much is a barely kind of case. This is a very much a fringe case here. If conditions got marginally better for these storms, then we'd be talking about basically the certainty of a very large outbreak occurring across southeast Queensland. That's only that marginal incremental improvement, and I might want to say that if temperatures drop on the forecast by 1 or 2 degrees in the next couple of days, which is possible if this Seabreeze line does get in a little bit earlier, then we are likely looking at an increased risk of severe thunderstorm potential through southeast Queensland. But at this point in time, conditions look to be a little bit too hostile for a very widespread and expansive outbreak like we saw on Saturday. And I think that the risk for the majority of people, particularly in the Brisbane and the Gold Coast area and through the more concentrated portions of Southeast Queensland, is extremely minimal to non-existent at this point in time. So my advice to you, monitor this forecast very, very closely in the next couple of days. I reckon we could see a couple of thunderstorms firing up, especially later Thursday afternoon. It could definitely be some pulse thunderstorm activity, or it could be some supercell thunderstorm activity, depending on what conditions do sweep in when that southerly change does get itself going. The places to watch right now will be in and around Gympie, but for now, we're not running off Brisbane, but it looks extremely unlikely that the Brisbane city area and the majority of her suburbs will see anything in the way of thunderstorm activity, and it's highly unlikely that they're going to see severe thunderstorm activity at that as well. This is not something to be concerned about. The forecast is still very uncertain, and we're going to be seeing a lot of chopping and changing in the next couple of days. Again, not something to worry about, not something to be making plans about at this point in time, and I imagine we'll have some definitive answers by tomorrow. And if we don't see a strong outbreak on the forecast, I think the chances of a strong outbreak by tomorrow very, very minimal across Southeast Queensland. I hope that does make sense. Any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Another big storm day is the chance of occurring on Thursday, but it doesn't look like it's going to be too expansive or too widespread. And even now, the chances of that big storm day don't look to be too solid at this point in time. Now, conditions over the next week across northern Australia have dried up just a little bit. We are looking at the chances of some thunderstorms around the 26th or the 27th into the Cape York Peninsula, and also the chances of some more expansive thunderstorm activity through the NT and WA in the next couple of days, particularly over into the Kimberley region of WA. A lot of convective thunderstorms have been getting themselves going in the evening hours. You can see last night some good storms blowing up into the Kimberley region. We've had some sporadic thunderstorm activity as well, moving into parts of the northern Pilbara, so inland from Marble Bar and Telfer, and through some of the iron ore country. Some good thunderstorms have been developing in those locations, and you can actually see this morning the remnants of these thunderstorms now pushing down in towards South Australia. Some streaky lines of heavy showers moving through down in towards the Eyre Peninsula. Much needed heavy rainfall at that as well. Looking a bit more long range, we do have a bit of a thunderstorm potential out towards the end of October. Conditions do look to be primed for a bit of an outbreak into the last couple of days of October or the first couple of days of November through parts of Queensland, but at this point in time, still, again, a lot of uncertainties that we're talking about on the long-range forecast, the long-range outlook. One thing that we have noticed is convective available potential energy values will be through the roof for this one, because it is going to be a little bit more northerly based. And again, it looks like Southeast Queensland dodges the absolute worst of these thunderstorms, moving up further north into the Capricorn coastline. But it's that time of the year when this massive surge of convective available potential energy in the Gulf of Carpentaria begins to be sent down through Queensland, and these values here, they can create some gnarly thunderstorms once they get themselves going into the more central parts of Queensland, and particularly down into the eastern coast of Queensland as well. Looking a little bit more long range, we don't really have anything in the way of tropical activity such as tropical lows or tropical cyclones for at least the next month or month and a half across northern Australia. Generally what we would be expecting at this time of the year, but again, not seeing any signals right now. We are now beginning to see a tropical low, though, develop southwest of Indonesia and towards the north of the Cocos-Keeling Islands. That's really going to get its act together in the next 48 hours or so, and a full-blown tropical low is a possibility towards the northwest of the Cocos-Keeling Islands. This one looks like it is going to get itself going into a full-blown tropical low. Definitely not a tropical cyclone, but it will be our third, I believe, or the fourth tropical low of the 2025-2026 season, and exactly where we would be expecting them to develop at this point in time, considering the conditions and considering the state of the climate across Western Australia. Of course, in that strong negative Indian Ocean dipole phase, we'd be looking at tropical lows developing in abundance towards the northwest of WA, and that's exactly what we're seeing here with this forecast. Again, very limited chance that this becomes a cyclone, probably less than a 5% chance at this point in time, and if it does, it's of course not going to be any threat to the Australian mainland, but we have seen a bit of a bump up in terms of the intensity compared to yesterday's forecast. Now a solid swathe of 70 km/h wind gusts towards the south of their storm centre, and it could provide the Cocos-Keeling Islands with some gusty and windy conditions and some showery conditions for the period between about Wednesday morning out to about Thursday morning, when things should begin to calm down over there. But yeah, definitely an interesting sight to see, and it's what we would be expecting to see at this time of the year. Tropical activity already really getting itself going towards the north of Mauritius and Reunion Island, towards the east of Madagascar here into the southwest Indian Ocean. It looks like we might see a cyclone down there. In fact, it looks like we actually already have a cyclone that's getting itself going towards the north east of Mauritius, very far offshore from Mauritius. But at this point in time, no threat to the Australian mainland, and as we see that Madden-Julian oscillation begin to move in towards the northern parts of Australia, we are going to begin to see more tropical activity like this, particularly over the West Australian waters over the next month or so. Into the southwest corner of Western Australia, have a look at this. This is a defined low pressure system, a defined cutoff low pressure system, that's sending some showers and some convective thunderstorms into the Perth City area, and particularly through the lower west and southwest regions. These showers aren't anything too crazy, but they are packing a punch in a few locations. They are quite heavy and also pretty slow moving, and they could drop 10 to 15 millimeters in a quick period of time. Falls between 10 to 25 millimeters can be expected south of Mandurah today, down through Bunbury and Busselton, and then into the southwest Capes region. This cutoff low is packing more of a punch than they do normally do at this time of the year, and again, that's fueled by warm sea temperatures coming down that Lewin Current as a result of that negative Indian Ocean dipole. Again, showers expected to be quite widespread through the Perth metro area, tending to the chance of a thunderstorm later today. I wouldn't be surprised if we heard a few rumbles after lunchtime out to about 5 or 6 o'clock tonight, when showers and rainfall are then expected to ease off and clear out of the Perth metro area into early tomorrow morning, and you can see the rainfall making itself scarce from that point onwards. Very limited stuff expected from that point onwards, and once that southern annular mode does swing back, favouring rainfall, pulling further away from the Australian coastline, and we're going to see the proper summer heat begin to build, which is going to occur in the next 2 weeks or so. Unfortunately, no signals of thunderstorms out into the central regions of WA. I'm itching to get out there for a chase, so I'm looking every single day to see if we do have a glimmer of hope of thunderstorm activity into the goldfields or through parts of the wheat belt preferably. That looks like it's still a couple of weeks away at this point in time. And as predicted, the rainfall forecast and situation through Victoria has been bumped down once again from yesterday's forecast. You can see swathes of rainfall between that 25 to 40 millimetre mark are expected over the next 2 weeks through central parts of Victoria. There is going to be some half-decent rainfall accumulations coming through today for some locations. We may see falls between the 5 to 15 millimetre mark, particularly if this kind of rain train does continue. But for the most part, over the next 14 days, rainfall is not looking to flash through parts of Victoria, and it is rainfall they do desperately need. There's a lot more information on it in the Southern Stratospheric Warming event. However, one more interesting feature that I would like to talk about is the severe thunderstorm situation for South Australia. Tomorrow could bring a gnarly outbreak of potentially severe or even dangerous thunderstorms to parts of the Eyre Peninsula, but especially further north out towards Lake Torrens and Roxby Downs. Developing in the afternoon after about 1:30 or 2 o'clock, we're expecting a line of thunderstorms to begin to develop into the western half of SA. That's going to contract down in towards the Ceduna and the Streaky Bay area, then moving through the Eyre Peninsula as strong severe thunderstorms into the early to middle parts of the afternoon. These thunderstorms will then cross over into the Yorke Peninsula and then into the Adelaide area from about 4 o'clock onwards, and we're going to see these thunderstorms become strong and potentially severe, with damaging to locally destructive wind gusts, pockets of heavy rainfall, and potentially large hailstones. Especially the further inland you get, the hailstone risk does begin to increase. The Eyre Peninsula could cop a bit of a beating from these thunderstorms. It's very lucky that these thunderstorms haven't occurred earlier on in the month of October and really coincided with harvest. But if you do have crops out there, I would pull out all the stops to get them out of the ground throughout the course of today. I don't wait till tomorrow or Wednesday, especially if there is a hail risk, which there is now for the Eyre Peninsula. There is a significant risk of crop losses with some of these storms that could come through. Now remember, if we do see hailstones and hail-bearing thunderstorms, they will be isolated in nature, and not everywhere is going to cop a direct hit from hailstones. But if we do see a hailstone risk develop, that could pose a significant risk to farmers that still have their crop in the ground. Hail destroys crops, it destroys agriculture, and if you're planning on doing a harvest this week, get these crops out of the ground today or tomorrow, and preferably by about midday tomorrow before these thunderstorms do begin to build. Not only will the wind harm these crops, but it'll also look like the hailstone risk, if there is one, which it's looking highly likely, particularly through the Eyre Peninsula, will cause some significant problems. So definitely, again, it's something to be watching quite closely. And one thing that I would also like to add and touch on is the temperature risk through parts of Central Australia. Not only is it going to be extremely hot again around Lake Eyre, I mean, it's amazing that just a few months ago, we're looking at temperatures here, daytime maximums below 20 degrees, and it was a beautiful lake paradise, basically, and now it's a harsh, hot desert interior. 43 degrees today around Lake Eyre, and it's going to be even warmer the further out towards the east you get. Moomba looking at 45 tomorrow. Birdsville also looking at a top into the early 40s. Very, very warm indeed, and temperatures are going to continue to rise in this part of Australia. And once again, that thunderstorm risk is going to be mainly contributed to by those temperatures. Severe thunderstorms are then possible late into Tuesday night into the early parts of Wednesday morning through the western half of Victoria, particularly north of Hawthorne and Ballarat. We'll be seeing thunderstorms extending into parts of Mildura, and they'll also present a dust storm risk as well, because ahead of these thunderstorms, we're going to be talking about some damaging to locally destructive winds, and that will blow up lines of dust storms that are going to move through into the western half of New South Wales as well. Much needed rainfall coming through to central parts of Victoria, but only briefly through tomorrow morning and into very early parts of tomorrow afternoon. The rainfall clearing out towards the west of Bendigo after about midday, and then clearing out into the mountainous regions after about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So a very brief period is expected, and then a chance of thunderstorms and potentially severe ones into the northeast of New South Wales around Tamworth up towards Narrabri and Lightning Ridge through Wednesday afternoon rather, and a chance of thunderstorms most likely of the non-severe variety around the Canberra area through tomorrow through rather Wednesday evening by the looks of things. Anyways, that is going to do it for today's weather forecast update. If you have found it enjoyable and informative, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The support lately has been massively appreciated, but it shows you that even though we are in a bit of a lull between severe thunderstorm activity, it's still a busy period on the weather scene around Australia. Lots of thunderstorms, lots of rainfall to be talking about, and even a tropical low towards the northwest of WA. That'll do it for me today. A special shout out, of course, to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. This is everybody that's sponsoring the channel, and I have to say a massive thank you to everybody's support. It is massively appreciated. That's going to do it for me today, and I'll catch you on the next storm. Have a great week and have a great Monday. Goodbye.